nii, palun nüüd jälle rahunege maha, need, kes veel ei ole maha rahunenud. Ma loodan, et kõigil on kõht kenasti täis, meel on hea. Nüüd tuleb üks pikem esitlusvoor, selles mõttes kokku 3 esinejat. So, it's time we are going to continue, and our next presentation will be again from overseas. It's from United Kingdom, and Paul Holt. He will introduce himself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everybody. In England, we call this position in a presentation the graveyard slot. And the reason it's the graveyard slot is you've all had your lunch, you've had a heavy morning, and the chances are some of you might just start getting the nodding head. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a warning. I'm going to be looking for a volunteer in about 5 minutes. So anybody that might be nodding might just well be volunteering because you're saying, yes, I'll come up. So my background, well, the first thing I'm going to do is take you through a journey of understanding the process of construction from the public sector perspective. I've got 25 minutes to do that. I'm probably going to cover about 100 years. So that's not a bad challenge. My first confession is I am not an academic. So you'll get a very British builder's view of the world. I sometimes say I'm a simple builder, but in reality my background has been that I have looked after major hospital sites as a director in the past for 15 years. I have held a £40 million annual revenue budget. I have managed over 1,000 staff. I have also moved into the university area for a short period of time, and I laugh when I say I actually stepped down to take on a £350 million capital programme. Believe me, that was a damn sight easier than being a director in the NHS. I have then since moved on, and I'm working in the private sector for the first time in my career. I've been 15 months in there. And I'm currently a project director for a scheme in the northwest around delivering a wellbeing village. And I want to just pick up Rowan's point when he asked the question of Mike about how is housing changing in the British culture. This project is over £100 million, it's 600 units. We're just about to go to outline planning, and our outline plan doesn't talk about housing. It talks about people, people first, health, well-being, fitness, how we're going to deliver a culture of preventive medicine so that people do not need to go into the NHS. The land that we're building on, we are not allowed to build houses on. And yet we're going to get it through planning to build houses because it's been accepted as a health project, not a housing project. The houses are an outcome, the health is the input. So who am I? We're consultants like a lot of people. We deal with 230 million to 250 million pounds worth of work. We are a standard type of consultancy in the British culture. My job is to do something slightly different for MAC, is introducing them to the public sector and to navigate them through the process of dealing with the public sector. Now my second confession is, I haven't got fly-throughs, I haven't got moving robots, I haven't got glorious pictures of all this technology that I've been seeing this morning. What I have got is a picture of Boris. Okay? So what I'm trying to do with this is just show you a little bit of the British culture. The British bulldog. Every one of us is proud of our own nation. Britain think they're unique in it, of course we're not. We are an island, we like to be an island, we want to be an island again. Put the walls up and ignore the rest of Europe. We have nominated a leader to take us through that process. And to be honest with you, and it's not a political statement, he is actually saying we're going to do it. Whether we like it or not, we've made a decision, he's actually driving this through. I have been talking to some of my colleagues last night about the European version of Boris, and it's not that much different than the British version. But equally, from a British perspective, We are very good at ignoring good advice. We are very good at ignoring what is obvious. We are very traditional. So, the process of construction. The reason I want to take you through this journey is because we're actually talking about the process of modularisation and how we're going to make things efficiently. Part of what I want to do is explain, before you even get to that point, you've got to think about people. You've got to think about the system that we're going in. And at this point, I'm going to look for a volunteer. And if there's anybody called Saeed in the room, then that person needs to join me. Okay? I did warn him. So if you just come and stand here, please. So if you think about the construction process, we have the RIBA Plan of Works, Royal Institute of British Architects, very good system of methodology. And then we have the public sector that has the thing called the business case. So I'm the client, no, you're the client, I forgot. He's the client, I'm the contractor, the developer. And I say hello to Saeed, and we are the best of friends. Okay? We love each other. At this point, inception. We walk forward a little bit, we stop, keep talking to each other, we're happy. We walk forward to maybe concept design, we keep talking to each other, we're still happy. He's doing the outline business case. We walk forward a little bit further, he's finished the outline business case. And then he says to me, hang on Paul, stop. We can't afford it. And then it becomes a game of snakes and ladders. Because he stays there, and I go back. And then I walk forward and do a bit more design, and a bit more concept work, and a bit good. And he has a look, says, no, a bit more. So I go back a bit further, and eventually I get here. And remember, this is a timeline of completion that Saeed has told me he wants to finish at the end of the stage. So I'm looking at him a bit stranger, thinking, okay, we're still friends. Are we still friends? Good, excellent, we're still friends. So we move forward. We get into conversations about detailed design, we discuss it all, and we get to the point of detailed design. I've got a price. Saeed says, I think, okay, I can live with it, but now I've got to go and ask my colleagues at the board, can we afford it? So he leaves me stood here, and Saeed will now start walking until I tell him to stop. So just nicely, he's gracious, isn't he? Okay, keep going, stop there. So turn around, give me a wave. Hello? He then says, go. No, you stay there, you bring me to you. So, but importantly, look at the gap between where I've got to and where he's gone. And this is the problem with modularisation. Is as I start to move forward, the board, Saeed as the client, has been talking to everybody about, can we afford it? We hope as a contractor we get here, and he nods. Good, he's nodding. He says, I can go forward. Often, we end up going backwards again. He stays there, and as a contractor, we end up going back again because they've realised they can't afford the job. So we then go through the design process again and again and again. We've not even started talking about modularisation. But obviously, when I get to this point, modern methods of construction cannot work because I've not designed it at the beginning. So then Saeed says to me, can you build a building? I'm a contractor. I've got a profit margin. I'll go say yes. But look at the gap I've got now. The reality is, he stays there, I then have to build to here. So I have only got probably a third of the whole process time to construct, which is a problem when you're trying to do what we're talking about today about rationalisation. Saeed comes forward, he stops there, he looks at me to say, where's my building? Because of course I've run out of time. So I carry on walking and I've missed the target. I've missed the deadline, I'm now over budget. I don't like him anymore. So I say, I'll see you in court. Okay? It's a short method, but that is what that thanks Saeed. We should give him a round of applause for his What I'm showing you though, is in reality, that is a real process that I have dealt with for 30 years. And I have had to answer a board of directors, the people that run an NHS hospital, as to why we keep missing deadlines. And you cannot say to your client, because you're poor at your job. Okay? So in essence, we're both building a building Or alternatively, we're both building a bridge. The REBA process is the one I follow, the business case is the one they follow, and your bridge doesn't match. And equally as a client and contractor, especially in the construction industry, it is very confrontational. We like to fight each other, back to the British bulldog nature. And the client thinks he can just say to the contractor, here's all the risk. The contractor's going, I'm having no risk. So that's the conflict again in terms of the relationship. I think equally when we talk about modern methods of construction, we're talking about new technology. I have to put that slide up at the far right. I don't know if you know about this. That is called Grenfell. That is a 1960s flat that was modernised by introducing a wraparound facade of insulation. New methods of construction. There was a fire and over 70 people had died. That is just 3 years ago. It is just started to come out in terms of who's going to get sued, who's going to go to court, and the families, rightly so, are angry. But the reason I show that is that we're dealing with a situation in Britain of introducing modern methods of construction and new technology when people's perception, their understanding, is modern methods fail. People die. So we're actually trying to launch new styles of construction where people might have a different mindset. Equally, when you talk about modern methods of construction, you get people thinking about porta cabins, you get people thinking about shell construction, etc. Lego building, toilet blocks. I thought I've lost the slide. So, almost, if you think about modern methods of construction, everything you're talking about, the whole reality of everything, and you still see why we don't actually create a culture to deliver. So argue at this point, I could just say, that's the presentation over with, we're shutting up shop because we just can't do it. But I've still got 15 minutes to go. So what I want to do is then say, well, what is happening? Now I've set the scene with regards to the culture, the environment, and the situation, which is real. What is actually happening? Thank you. We're dealing with modern methods of construction. We've been doing it for years. We have built concrete monsters. This was the answer to post-war construction. This was the answer in terms of building quick, easy, fast. The Wellbeing Village that we're building is absolutely the opposite to this, because this was not about people. This was about easy methods of construction and getting built houses up quickly, many of which we're now demolishing. I don't intend to go through all these, by the way. These are just some bullet points, and we've touched on them. So we have the farmer report that does talk about the reasons why we cannot deliver. I've read the farmer reports. Even then, it really doesn't talk about the client. It is almost looking out a little bit at the construction industry. It's almost pointing at the construction industry. What is interesting is the House of Lords have taken the farmer report and have built on it. They've done a review. And it's the first time in a long time I've actually seen the government say, we are the government. We are going to do something different. We're going to drive change because we're going to try and make policy that people choose to say you build in a different way. That's an important statement. They will never instruct it happens. You still have a choice. But what they are starting to do through encouragement is identify where the cash is. And a little bit of some of the other slides this morning were about efficiency, creating the appetite to build. So in the NHS, we're talking about £10 billion worth of funding. Housing, for me, is going to unlock a lot of what might be modern methods of construction. We have something called Homes England. They're sat on £23 billion to build the 40,000 houses that they're committed to. I think they've built about 600. And when you talk to the people that have got that money, they do not know how to deliver. They cannot see how they're going to deliver it, and yet they take the money. So the project we're working on is a solution in many respects. You then think about what we're talking about today, the whole purpose of today. I mean, another one is that we did some small piece of research with black consultants you've heard about. They've identified that it's actually £600 billion worth of cash that governments are going to pump prime the industry over the next 10 years. That is not a small amount of money. There might be a reason for that, because I think Mark and I were discussing this a little bit, that we are actually, both our country and your countries might be moving into a little bit of recession. Technically, we are in recession, because we've had 6 months of deterioration of growth in the construction industry. We're in a second quarter of low growth. Arguably, that's because of all the politics of Brexit. At the very bottom, you see that we talk about the DOE is the Department of Education. Working with the seismic project, they really are very productive, clever. They're really pushing this forward. And they want to, they've just gone out to an agreement, they've gone for a framework to say we want to build £3 billion worth of new primary schools and secondary schools over the next 10 years. And we want to force it through modern methods of construction, albeit it might be concrete, it might be steel, it might be off-site construction. Again, they can't dictate what happens. What they can do is say, you've got to demonstrate if you're going to win, 30% of what you deliver is built off-site. So they're forcing some of the quality marks. The modern method constructors are saying, we've probably got the capacity to build £1 billion worth of that work. So whilst the governments are pushing it, we've got a gap of £2 billion of the supply chain to be able to deliver. So you can see already we've got a problem. Whilst we're promoting modern methods, platform construction, the industry is lagging behind because they've not invested. Equally, in terms of either the industry or the clients, you know, my background is health. So we now have some ideas of modern methods of construction, platform design. We have standard rooms. We almost high-five each other that we've actually got standard rooms. It took 10 years to get to that point. We're still building hospitals as bespoke design because we go and ask the clients, because they hold the money. And they all want to have their stamp of approval on that. But at least we are moving forward with regards to that kind of construction. Both Mike and I have given you the link to seismic. It's a start of a journey about efficiency. It is not the answer by any stretch of the imagination. They are on the start of the journey, but they are introducing a challenge that really should start to change the way that we produce construction. And it's a healthy challenge. And Richard, who is our colleague, is part of the work that we're doing with Huddersfield. I found this on the web. The reason I put this up, again, is the story of one main contractor and how they're delivering their thoughts, their journey on modern methods of construction. Doesn't mean it's right, it's just their view of the world. But it just shows that, again, I think we've all identified, this is not something new. This arguably is history repeating itself. We did it in the 60s, we probably changed our mind in the 70s, or the 80s and 90s. We're going back to something that we think is new, and yet in reality we've been doing this a long time. I think, again, what we're trying to do here is show how the industry is responding. These are different contractors with different awards, industry recognising how they're changing, and in reality, the opportunities that are arising, of which, you know, for Estonia is about timber housing that may well become part and parcel of the solution. For Europe, there's £2 billion worth of opportunities sitting there, just in education, never mind housing. Interestingly, from my perspective, is that the wellbeing village that we are working on, we're not at outline design yet, and yet we've appointed a contractor to be our partner. Basic Construction are an international contractor. They are from China. Basic Construction are a British company. They have been up to our site, they have looked at it, they are already advising us on our cost modelling. And what they're doing is saying, how can we create efficiencies through modern methods, platform construction, etc. And they are talking to the supply chain in China. And I know that there's probably, as a political statement, people will agree, disagree. But what we see is that's part of the long-term solution because there is not enough supply chain in our country. We're obviously working with Huddersfield. I mean, we talked to Denmark and Holland. What we are finding though is that the tier 1 contractors, the big contractors, the traditional contractors, still aren't engaging. The main contractors that I spoke to in the NHS that built my hospitals don't build houses. And they said, we don't build houses. And I've said, guys, you're missing an opportunity. They don't recognise the funding stream. They still want to do the way they build the buildings, the way they built them for the last 30 years, because that's how they've worked out their profit margins. So what we're saying to them, if you don't change, you will find that some of the traditional work might dry up, it still exists. The actual growing market is platform construction, modern methods, etc. You need to get on board, guys. And we're working with Beijing Construction is a tier 1 contractor. But it's encouraging that debate to make, dare I say, influence change if they wish to. What we have talked about, and what is clear in the construction industry, and to point a little bit of Andre's response to one of the questions, is that we're very protective of our information. That is the nature of construction. We're very competitive. It's the way we exist. If we've got a little bit of a better idea than somebody else, we're going to win the work, arguably. But it means as an industry, we're fragmented. Everybody's doing their own thing. We can see that there's an improvement in a number of areas. Critically, the government are leading the process, are trying to change the methodology. There are clear business opportunities and the risks. The risks to both the client and the contractor exist irrespective, and we need to look at the way we build relationships up. So as we walk through the line, we walk together. From a MAC perspective, clearly there's a business opportunity. We're driving that, that's why I'm here. We're obviously working with Huddersfield, and Huddersfield have got some fantastic ideas, and we just put a bid in recently to develop those ideas. And we are looking at people in this room to maybe come and have a conversation, because one of you might have an idea that gives you an opportunity in the market. Okay? So that's it, thank you.
So, thanks all. And boys, girls, questions. Any ideas?
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for the presentation. I'm just wondering, reflecting on what you said about clients and the role of clients, is there any way that we can change that model so that we as an industry can present a lot of different solutions to clients, limit the degree to which they can influence the process, but give them maximum value of what they really value as part of it? So I guess I'm flipping the question the other way around.
Sure.
Instead of saying the clients have to drive this, how can the industry drive a process by which the clients can engage better in delivering better products?
Okay. I'll give that answer from an NHS perspective, because value has two measures. One is primarily the patient experience, that we don't reduce that, in fact we should enhance it, and the other one is cost. The person to influence in terms of cost is the Director of Finance. If I can go to a Director of Finance and confidently say, and using Andre's model of the way he will produce it, and dare I say the way Black are developing it, I can deliver that project 30% cheaper than the last one, and here's my evidence, and have the confidence to say, and I'm going to do it, that should win the argument at one level. What you have to make sure is this journey that I talked about, everybody stays together, because I'm also saying I'm limiting options, I'm limiting choice, I'm limiting just how much you input it. I'm going to give you a standard response. I'm going to give you a car. But what I am going to allow you to do is choose the colour of the car, maybe choose a little bit of whether you have one or two of the extras, maybe an opening window or the skylight, or whatever. But I'm going to limit choice. As a director, it was more important that I gave the director of nursing the confidence that I wasn't making something cheap. And so you have to, this is the value of the patients, you have to demonstrate clearly that you do provide value and provide the right environment. The work that the Department of Education is doing, and typical of government bodies, the public sector, education sit there, the health sit there, and never do the twain meet. They carry on in their own way. And yet I've walked around primary schools at factories and can immediately say, well, that's a 4-bed ward, that's the corridor, that's utility, private rooms. I can see it straight away. And yet when I've tried to talk to NHS England, they've just said, oh no, it doesn't work, we're different. Now what I know, and I might know, we've done a piece of work we bid for Innovate UK for developing modern methods of construction, the platform design, and we're looking to get funded. We know that the health have done the same. Well, that's being led by architects, we've been led out by university. And that's hopefully the difference. But I think to summarise, it has to be the right quality, and you have to get to the right people to talk through why this is so much different. And that gives you the value.
Thanks, Paul, for a very good answer. Can anybody else create a wonderful question? An excellent question for Paul.
I would outside is available for hire. If you need this extra.
So, seems no questions, so thank you for your presentation.